So deep linking lets you connect from one app to another app or from a website to an app. I'm going to focus on the app to app connection for this video. It's a very good feature to know about if you are creating multiple apps that want to connect with each other. Here you can see the documentation. It goes through setting up with Expo and with React CLI. So I'm going to focus on the CLI because I don't really use Expo. Configuration is a little bit different, but if you can do it with one, you can do it with the other pretty easily. So let's go down to the CLI here, and it tells you how to test here too. With iOS, you want to add these lines to your app delegate.m file here, and I've already done that. If you look in the change here, you can see that I've added that in the app delegate.m file already. Let's go down here. If you're using an older version of iOS, you need to add more stuff here. And I'm not using universal links. The last step for iOS is you want to go to your URL types and add a type here. And I will show you this part later when I actually create the type in the code. Okay? And then we can test the deep link with this line here. Okay? And for Android, we want to actually add a intent filter. So we'll come back to this later too. So let's go to the next link here called configuring links. And this actually tells you how to create the link itself. This documentation can be a little bit confusing if you're not familiar with routes and links in general. But the goal of this video is to explain this stuff in a very simple manner. So let's actually go to the code now. So this is the code from the second video. It helps if you've seen the first two videos. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go up here to the app and I want to create a new object. I want to say constant linking. And in here, we want to create first something called prefixes. So prefixes. So prefixes tells your app what to listen for. So this would be like the URL. So if you have a website to app connection, you would say HTTPS, and then you would put your URL, like maybe recipes.com here. We're just going to have the app to app connection. So I'm going to put recipes. I think I spelled that right. Recipes. And then it'll just be : //. So this is the default format for app to app connections. If you have a different word, you can put whatever you want here, but it has to have the : //. Okay? And if we go to the docs, then you can see something similar right here. Okay? And now we need to create our config object here. So our config actually defines how our app listens for different strings that connect to our screens. Okay? So in this case here, if the app detects that it has the user, so it has my chat : //user, it will open up the profile screen for this app here. So let's go to our app again. And I'm going to create one for every single screen in our app. So we have our main feed screen here with our drawer. We have our detail screen. We have our bottom tabs with tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. We have our top tabs with 1, 2, 3. And we have our different drawers here with contacts, favorites, and we have our settings here. So we're going to create a deep link for every single screen in our app. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Okay, so let's get on here. I want to create a config object. And inside here, we have our screens. So first, I'm going to put our feed screen here. Oops, should be : Okay, and then I'm going to say feed. So this has to be the same name as these names in your navigator. So that's important. If these don't match, then they will not open up the screen. Okay? And I want to make sure I named that correctly. Maybe I didn't. Okay, yeah. So feed. So this will open up the main screen here with the drawer. So feed. So I want to just say feed here. Okay. And then while we're here, let's do the detail. Detail and detail. Okay, feed. Okay, so once we have our linking object here, we can just put it into our navigator container here. So down here, let's add linking, and that'll be equal to the linking object that we have up top. Linking, okay? And save. Okay, so now we actually need a second app for this test. So I've already created an app, so I'm going to switch over to that. And I call it Deep Link Test. So this is an app I created before the video. It's very simple. Let's actually go to the app in our simulator here. So this is how the app looks. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 different buttons here. And each button opens up a different part of our main app. Okay, so show feed, show detail, show feed, show detail, show bottom tabs, top tabs, nested top tab, nested bottom tab, contacts, favorite, user ID, show settings. Okay, and then we have some styling here for that too. And that's it for this app. It's just one file here. Okay, so to actually link to your other app, you need to import a class here called linking. So you say linking from React Native. All you need to do is say linking dot open URL. I think it's all capitalized too, URL, yeah. And then you open that here. So you can see here, if you want to look at the docs for this, you can go here, open. And this is part of the React Native library, not the React Navigation library. Okay, so you can see up here, you can see we have linking, and it opens up the URL that you passed in here. Okay. Let's see. There's a few other things here too that you can do with it, but we're only going to use it for the linking.open URL. I want to keep this video pretty simple. So let's actually pass in the URL that we want to open. If we go back to the other app, up here you can see for the feed screen, we want to pass in recipes / feed. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. And let's actually change this to lowercase so we're not confusing that with the actual screen component. So save. And let's go back here. And I'm going to paste in that. And then I'm going to say feed. Okay. And then down here, let's do the same thing. Let's say linking.open URL. And then this will be detail. Okay. And save. So sorry about the switching back and forth, but I'm working on two different apps here, so I kind of have to. So reload this. And sometimes you might get this error here. So this app here, the old app React Navigation has 0.61.5, and the new app I created today has the newest version, which is 0.63.2. So you have two different options here. You can actually keep it like it is here and just reinstall this app, or you can actually upgrade the version of this app to 0.63 or 0.63.2. I'm not going to do that for this video because upgrading from this version to this version is a pain in the ass. Okay, so now I installed the test app with these changes here. So I'm going to go back and actually start this app up. And I should not get an error now. Okay, so while that's running, I'm going to go to Xcode and show you how to set up the URL type. So you would open up your project file and you would go over here to your info tab. And then down here, you have URL types. So I've already added the type here, but you would just add it under URL types, or you would add it under URL schemes here. So whatever your scheme name is here, so I have recipes, you would put that into the Euro scheme. So if you don't have this here, then nothing will happen if you try to open up your deep links. Okay. Remember, for iOS, you need this scheme set up, and you need the code added to your app.delegate.m that it says in the documentation. Okay. So let's go back to our app now. So we have that. So now I want to test opening up the feed screen and the detail screen. So let's go back to our deep link test app, and let's open up the feed. And now you can see we open up the feed here, but we have no title here, and I'll come back to this in a little bit. So let's go back to our test app. Let's open up the food detail screen. You can see we have no title here too. So let's say that we want to pass data to our screens. Okay. How do we do that? So if you go to the docs here, let's go passing data. Let's go pass. I think it's, yeah, here. Okay. So if you want to pass params, there's two different ways to do this. You saw before that we're defining our screens by saying feed and then the feed name here. So you can also define your path by this method here, which lets you add more things to your object. Okay. So I usually use this notation here instead if I want to pass in other things to my screen. And also you can parse the items that you pass in. So let's say that you want to pass in the ID, but you want the actual prop in your screen to be user/ID. Then you could just do it this way. So it'll get the ID from your path. It'll name it user/ID. And then you can find that name in the ID field. Okay. So let's go back to our code. Let's go to the main app. And now I want to listen for some other parameters. So let's go back up here. Now I want to listen for a title for our feed screen. So let's do /title. And here I want to listen for a food. So I want to say /food. So when you try to navigate to the screens, it'll look for this title and this food. If you don't have it, it won't work. Okay, so we have title and food. So let's save. And let's go back to our test app. And now I want to pass in some other parameters. So I want to pass in feed / for the title, let's say deep linking. Okay. And for here, let's just call it curry and save. And sorry about all the switching back and forth. It's kind of a pain. So let's reload this. So after I test this, I'm actually going to fill in the rest of these and then test. So I don't have to switch back and forth the entire video. Okay, so let's run. Okay, and let's quit this and let's go back to our main app. And I'm going to run this one now. Okay, and while that one is running, I'm going to actually go ahead and add some more screens here. I'm going to put in the bottom tabs. So I have bottom tabs. This is the same name as we have bottom tabs, top tabs. And now I'm going to use the other notation. I'm going to say path. The path will be bottom tabs like this. Okay, so that's loaded. Let's test the navigation links with the actual title and the food item. So let's go to our feed screen and I'm going to log the route. So let's do console.log and route. Save, and let's go to the detail and let's do, so that one's already there. Okay. So I've commented out this use effect because it's not necessary for this video. That was for part 2. So let's go back to our test app and let's test the open feed. So we have open feed and we have our title here. So we have params.title, deep linking. So in the feed screen, let's actually write that as our title. So let's change this condition here and let's put detail result title and save. So now we can say open feed And now we have deep linking here. So this proves that we have linked from our test app to our main app here. So let's go to detail. And for the name up here we have route.params.food name. So let's just change that in our app.js to say food name instead of just food. So we can say food name. So it's the same name as what we have for our detail screen. So now it'll be route.param.food name, which is what we have in our detail screen here. Okay. So let's save. Let's go to the test app and let's pass that food name to our detail screen in our second app. So let's open food detail. And now you can see we have curry, which is what we are passing into here. Okay. So hopefully this makes sense so far. It's looking for a type of recipes. So it's opening the feed screen with the feed name, and it's opening the detail screen with the detail name. And then we're passing in different params that it's looking for in the main app here. Okay, so now let's continue with our bottom tabs here. So we have path, bottom tabs. And now let's say I want to actually open up these different tabs. So we have tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. Well, doing that is actually pretty easy. So in our bottom tabs, you put a sub object here for your screens. And these screens represent the nested navigator screens, which are our tabs. Okay. So put the comma here. So now if we look down here, we have our tab names. Our tab names are tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. So I named them both the same for the bottom tabs and the top tabs. Up here, we have tab 1. And then we have two different options here. We could say tab 1 and then colon. And I'm going to name this one B tab 1. So bottom tab 1. And let's put that in quotes. So can you guess how you would navigate to the screen? So you would actually say recipes / bottom tabs / BTAB1. Okay. So it would look like recipes / bottom tabs / BTAB1. But let's say I want to, or actually it should be underscore, and it would look like this here. But let's say I want to actually omit this part here, and I just want to say whenever you hear BT or BTAB1 from the recipe, so let's say I want to have this here. This is a more shorter, more concise way to do it. But in order to make it work, you could say exact true. And let's go to the documentation for that. So let's go down here and search for exact. Okay, so this part here says matching exact paths. It says by default, paths defined for each screen are matched against the URL relative to their parent screen's path. And it tells you the same thing that I said here. In order to get to this profile screen, you would say feed / users / ID. But if you put exact path here or exact true here, it will ignore the parent screen path. And then you could just say users / ID. Okay. So we're going to do it this way here. But this format isn't correct either. So let's actually go down here. I messed up here a little bit. So let's do this. And this. This should be part of the path here. There we go. And exact path should be in here. So remember, if you're adding other things to your screen name here, you cannot just put this. You need to actually wrap it in a bracket because we're adding exact path true here. Okay, so let's actually add our other tabs. Let's say tab 1. Okay, so this is tab 2. Normally in your apps, you wouldn't be navigating to every single screen in your app, but for this video, I want to make it so you know how to navigate to different types of screens. So we have bottom tab, so let's go down here, and now I want to put top tabs. And I'm going to copy and paste all of this here. And I'm going to change this to top tabs. Top tabs. And this one I'm going to say T tab. T tab. T tab. Okay, and I forgot to uppercase these T's here for camel case. You don't have to, but it's just easier to read. Okay, so we have bottom tabs, top tabs. So now we have our drawer screens to navigate to. So we have contacts, favorites, and settings. So let's go down here and let's add our favorites here. So let's do favorites. So again, make sure that this name is the same as the names of your screen. So we have favorites, contacts, settings. Okay, so we have favorites. So let's say I want to pass in more than one parameter. So how would I do that? For one parameter, let's put something called user here. And to pass in a second one, you would just chain them. So let's do user / ID. Okay, so this is the syntax that you would use to just chain multiple parameters in your app. So now let's do contacts, and let's do contacts here. So for this one, I want to have a parameter that we don't necessarily need for our contacts screen. So it'll be an optional parameter. So how do we make a parameter optional? Let's go to the documentation here, and I'm going to search for optional. So marking a parameter as optional. So it says you can do it by adding the question mark suffix. So let's go down here, and you would just add a question mark after the name. So pretty easy. Let's go back to our app, and let's add a optional parameter called user question mark. Okay. So remember, I said before, if these names aren't found in your URL, the actual screen won't open. But in this case, if you don't send a user with your contacts, then this will still work. So let's do settings. And for this one, I'm going to define the path instead of the object. So let's do path settings. And for this one, I'm going to pass in a few different parameters here. Let's do color, age, like the user's age, and I'm going to use is verified. So maybe like if the user is verified or not, it could be true or false. Verified. Okay. So far in this app, we have taken in different parameters and they have all been strings, right? But let's say I want to define these as different types. I want to have the color be a string, so like red, blue, green. I want to have the age be a number, so not a string. And I want to have is verified be a Boolean. So if you don't do anything with this as it is now, the age will be a string and this will be a string also. It doesn't matter what you send in here, it'll be a string. So to actually specify that this is a number and this is a Boolean, you need to use a parse here. So we say parse, and then you define an object here. So let's go to the documentation for this. So you can see here that they've defined this date as a number. So you could define different parts in your URL as different types. So let's do that. So I'm going to define the age as a number. And then I'm going to define is verified as a Boolean. So keep in mind that these are interface types here. Interface Boolean. So you cannot put something like you cannot put integer or whatever in here. That won't work. You need to put number. Okay. And for the color, let's rename it to something like theme color. And then I'm going to pass in the color up here. So let's do color. So we're passing in the color from the URL, and then we can define it as something else. So you can put whatever JavaScript you want in here to change the color or return whatever you want in this theme color parameter here. I'm going to use a formatted string here, and I'm going to say color dash, dash, and then I'm going to say $sign. Let's do color. So now when we go to the settings screen, we can get this theme color and it'll say color slash whatever you have in the color path up here. So I know this was a lot to get through, but this covers about 99% of what you use deep linking for in your app. So I'm showing you how to pass in different params to different screens. I'm showing you how to link to different tabs in your app. So linking to different sub navigators in your app. I'm showing you how to actually pass in multiple parameters. I'm showing you how to pass in optional parameters. And I'm showing you how to parse your URL so you can tell the other app what type of data you're listening for in your URL path. Okay, so let's save. And I'm going to hot restart that. And now we actually need to implement all these in our test app. So let's go back to our test app. And let's start with the bottom tabs. So let's go down here and let's say linking.open URL. I'm going to copy and paste this to make it faster. So copy paste. So we have recipes, and then remember we named it bottom tabs. If this name is not right, your screen will not open. And this one, I'm not going to have anything else with that. So that should open up the bottom tabs navigator, which will just be this here. Okay. Let's copy that down here. And now I'm going to put in top tabs. So how do we open up different tabs within the tab navigators? Let's copy paste this. So remember, we named them btab 1, btab 2, btab 3, ttab 1, ttab 2, ttab 3. So this is nested tab. So let's do ttab. So we could just put in 1 or 2 or 3, but let's say that we want to pass in the number that we want to go to. So I want to pass in the tab number here. And then I want to actually put that in the URL string. So let's make this a formatted string and let's pass in that tab. So let's do $tab. Okay. And we will actually call this method down below once we're done with the rest of these here. So let's do copy paste. This should be ttab. So tab. And this one will be btab. And let's pass in the tab here. Okay. Let's make sure that we call those the same thing. Ttab, btab, btab 1, ttab 1. Okay. So remember, if I didn't have this exact path true here, then you would actually need to say top tabs like this. Okay. So for context, we just have one param that's optional. So let's go back to this and I'm going to pass in or copy paste this first. And let's do contacts and let's say Julian. Or actually, let's omit the parameter to test that optional parameter. Okay, so show contacts and let's say show favorite user ID. So paste this in here and we called it favorites / I think we have the user and the ID. So Julian, and let's just put some random number in here. And for settings, we have our parsed data here. So we have settings, color, age is verified. Okay, so let's go back to our main app here and go to copy, paste this here, and we have settings. And we need a color, so let's do purple. And for the age, 35, and verified, true. Okay, I think that's everything. Hopefully we get no errors. We'll find out. So let's stop this app and run the test app. Okay, and now I'm going to quit this one and go back to our main app. And I'm actually going to log a few of these things to make sure that we're getting the correct information. Let's go to the favorites, contacts, and settings. So Here, let's copy paste from here and log the route. Console.log route. Paste these into the favorites and the settings. Okay. And we need to import the use route here. So let's go back here. We can actually get rid of that one. Okay. And do the same here. Get rid of navigation. And go to settings, and we can copy that into here also. Get rid of that. Okay, so now we should be able to see our console log our routes. So let's run. Okay, so we have the app with our new changes. So let's actually go back and test our deep linking. So let's test open feed. We have that working correctly. You can see we have our title deep linking here. Let's go back to our deep link test. Open food detail. We have that. It says curry. Okay. Now let's test the new functions that we added. Let's test open bottom tabs. You can see we opened the bottom tabs. It'll always start at the default tab that you have in your navigator if you do it that way. So let's go back. And back to our deep link test. And let's open top tabs. So we can see we have our top tabs open here. Let's test open top tab 1. So now we open a individual tab. So tab 1. Let's open tab 2. Okay, so now it opened tab 2 for our top tabs. So very handy. Let's go back and let's open tab 3. We open top tab 3. Let's go back. Bottom tab 1. That works. And let's go back to our screen here to kind of see what we're doing here. So bottom tab, we're on bottom tabs here. So let's do bottom tab 2. That's good. Bottom tab 3. That's good. Now let's try the optional parameters here. So open contact with optional parameters. So we have contacts here. And let's go back so we can see our logs for this one. So we have logs, contacts, params is empty. So let's go to our app.js and see what happens when we get rid of that optional flag here. So we're not passing in a user. So let's get rid of this optional part here. Let's save. Now let's go back to our test app and let's test that again for contacts. So you can see it did open up the app, but it didn't go to the contacts page. So let's test that one more time. Open contact with optional param. Again, it opened the app, but it didn't go to the contacts page. So keep that in mind. If the path that you have doesn't register completely, it still might open the app, but it won't go to where you expect it to go to. Okay, so let's put that back in here. Save. And let's try that one more time. And now you can see it went to the contacts here. Okay. So if we actually passed in that param, then you will see it here in this object. So let's go back and let's test the favorites. We're passing in the user and the ID. So let's open favorite user ID. So we have favorites here. And you can see in our log, we have params ID 5435 and user Julian. And if we go back to our test app, you can see that's what we passed in here, Julian and 5435. Okay, and keep note here that this 5435 is a string. So like I said before, everything that you pass in by default is a string. So now let's go back to our test app and let's open up the settings now. So settings, we have color age is verified, and we are defining the age as a number. This should be a Boolean. I messed up. So this should be a Boolean. So Boolean, save. Okay, so I have corrected that. Let's go back to our test app. Say open settings. So we have settings, and let's look at our data here. We have age 35. So you can see our age is not a string, it's a number now. We have color purple, and we have is verified is a Boolean. Okay, so that's how you tell the app what type to expect for each parameter. Okay, going over this one more time. So we have our linking object for our main app. So this tells the main app what links to look for from outside the app. So it looks for the URL type with the word recipes. Then it says, okay, for these screens here, look for these URL with these params here. So we have feed/title. So it's looking for a feed name and a title parameter. The detail screen is looking for a detail name and food name parameter. The bottom tabs is looking for the bottom tabs name. And then inside of the bottom tabs navigator, we can also listen for the bottom tab 1 or B tab 1, B tab 2, 3, same for top tabs here. And then favorites is looking for a user ID or a user and a ID. The context is looking for a optional user parameter here. If you don't have the user parameter here, that's fine. But if it is here, it will find it and it will add it to the route parameters. The settings is looking for the color, age, and is verified. And we're telling the app that the age should be a number, is verified should be a Boolean type. And for the theme color, we are passing in the color purple. Okay. Okay, while we're here, I noticed that we're not getting that theme color here. This has to be the same name as this up here. So this has to be color. So let's call this color. Color. Let's save. And then let's go back to our test app and let's open up the settings again. Okay, there we go. So yeah, make sure that this name is correct. So we have color, and then we have color/purple, which matches this syntax here. Okay. And if we go back to our test app, all we're doing is we have a bunch of buttons here, and we're calling these functions here that open up a URL. So there's one more thing that I want to do. I want to show you how to set this up on Android. I haven't done that yet for this video. So let's go back to our main app, and let's go to the manifest file in our Android app here. So let's Android main. And I'm not going to walk you through this entire thing, but I'm just going to actually copy and paste what I have from before into here and show you. Paste this part into here. So this is a lot to have for one app, but normally you won't be linking to every single screen in your app. That's not really a good thing for security. So we have a new intent here, and we have view action, default browsable. This you always need. And then you have your scheme here, which is recipes. So that's the same as your URL type for your iOS setup. And those match these here. Okay. Okay. And the second thing you need to do for the Android setup is you need to add your single activity or single task launch mode here. So Android launch mode, single task. So you have this to add to your manifest file, and you have your intent filter with your different path names here. Okay. And that's all you need to do for Android setup. If you miss any of these path names and you try to navigate to them, then it won't work. So yeah, I hope this video helped you out. I know it was a lot to go through. I tried to make it as simple as possible. Yeah, so this should help you with about 99% of your use cases with deep linking in your apps. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video and happy coding. Bye.